Good afternoon, good morning. Welcome from wherever it is you are tuning in to ETOA's webinar on Reopening Europe, Follow the Evidence. My name is Tim Fairhurst, and without any further ado, I'm going to invite the panel to introduce themselves. We'll just wait a little bit while the numbers creep up. We have a lot of people joining us today, and while they are joining, I'll just say a couple of housekeeping items. You will notice, ladies and gentlemen who are joining us, that there is a question function that you can submit questions to us. There are a lot of people in this webinar. Please keep the questions very short, and my colleagues in the background will be sorting through the questions, and if the time is appropriate, we will introduce the questions. But please submit the questions anyway, because ETOA will be reviewing them, and it provides very valuable information as to what the world thinks of this particular topic. I will also be using a polling function where we'll be inviting your opinion and asking you to vote on a couple of questions, so please be ready to participate in that as the conversation unfolds. With that, I am going to ask the panel to introduce themselves, and I'll start with Jennifer, and then we will go to Jakes, and then Luis, Petra, Yvonne, Christina, and Agnes. So we'll go in that order, please. So Jennifer, over to you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Tim, for having me here, and I hope everyone is staying safe and well. Jennifer Tombaugh from Tauk. We are the first licensed tour operator in the United States. We, in normal years, provide guided experiences on all 7 continents, on land, river, and small ships. 60% of our business is in Europe, and we're very eager to return.
Good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. My name is Jakes Moritz. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Expat Explore. We're a UK-based, mostly European tour operator. It's a group operator, and our main source market is the US, Australia, and New Zealand.
Luis.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Luis Araújo. I'm president of the Tourism of Portugal. Also the CEO for the European Travel Commission and the NEST, which is the Innovation Center in Portugal. And wonderful to be here, Tim. Thank you so much to ETOA.
Good morning and good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Petra Stušek. I am the Managing Director of Ljubljana Tourism, the DMO of the capital of Slovenia, and also at the same time the president of the Association European Cities Marketing, the leading European association in the field of managing both leisure and meetings industry in the city destinations.
Yeah, hallo und grüß Gott from Nuremberg. My name is Yvonne. I'm the CEO of the Nuremberg Tourist Promotion Board, and I'm also a member of the European Cities Marketing Board, and I'm very happy to be here and share ideas and discuss with you. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Christina from ECTA, the European Association of Travel Agents and Tour Operators. Our members are travel agents and tour operators all over Europe, both representing inbound and outbound, and also leisure and business travel agents. Looking forward to a nice discussion.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Agnès Leroux, Policy Director at Airlines for Europe. So this is the main European association for airlines. Before the crisis, we represented a bit more than 70% of the air traffic in Europe, and we are really obviously impacted by the current crisis, so very happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, panel, and we'll be hearing more from them in a few moments. So I will just say a few words of introduction just to place this discussion in context. A lot of you will have seen that the Tourism Manifesto issued a statement following the European Commission's announcement of a digital green certificate on the 17th of March. And subsequent to that, ETOA issued a statement in support, but also stressing the urgency of the current situation. We all know that the numbers are bad now. We know that the concern is of new variants, and that is the priority. But the current uncertainty is unsustainable, and we need a path out that does make sense to communities, business, and the traveling public. And we as the private sector, and I know very well as destinations, our position is that travel and tourism is part of public risk management machinery. We look after people for our daily job. We're not a threat to public risk management, and it's essential that the urgency that the private sector feels and destinations feel translates into political action. Our conclusion for now is that what we've seen is great scientific success. It's extraordinary what has been achieved in the last 12 to 14 months, but politically we're struggling. We're failing to do more than one thing at a time. We're failing to make decisions fast enough, although kudos to the European Parliament for fast tracking the procedure on the digital green certificate. And most obviously, we're failing to reach a coordinated position. That's difficult with a lot of people around the table, but it is necessary. And there is a global dimension to it because, you know, certainly with ETOA in the panel as well today, this is about Europeans visiting the world as well as the world visiting Europe. We know the impact is serious, and the impact is not just on demand, it is also on supply. Once travel is possible, will the supply chain be there to deliver the experiences everyone wants? Unless we can give some clarity to the buyers and the supply chain, we are in very serious difficulty. So apologies for the dramatic introduction. The urgency is real, and I will ask Jennifer to start our discussion by just giving her sense of the current status, the impact to date, and what she sees as the key issues going forward. Jennifer.
Yes, Tim, I don't think you've said it even dramatically at all. And in fact, that's the absolute reality of where we are here in the US and in our industry globally. The challenge is that there is no plan, and this continued uncertainty makes it incredibly difficult for all of us to not only run our businesses, but prepare for what might be coming down. And look, I want to be really clear. This is about balancing health and economy. Nobody is out here just saying, open the borders willy-nilly. We are taking extraordinary protocols for the protection of our guests, each and every one of us in the entire industry. As you said, it's the fabric of what we do. But we need to find responsible travel ways to open the border, and we need a plan. We need to know when the borders might open, what's going to be required to make that happen, and how that's all going to work. Here in the US, we have these. We have vaccine certificates, right? We have health credentials. Today, 30% of Americans will have their vaccine. We will be reaching 50% next month and 70% in the month of June, if not earlier. The vaccine rollout is going very well. I realize that's not the case in Europe. But where there is vaccine or where there is testing capabilities, there are responsible ways to open the border. And frankly, if we don't have a plan that allows us at least 60 days of notice, guests who are so eager to come back to Europe, I can't tell you, our phones are ringing off the hook because people are getting these and they're calling and saying, let us go to Europe. And we have to tell them, no, we don't know. And we need that 60-day window so that they can make their plans. Otherwise, they're moving into 2022. And there's a real risk right now that if a plan isn't announced soon, that the summer in Europe will be lost, which will be devastating not only for Americans wanting to go and the economy there, but for the European economy that is dependent upon inbound traffic, and vice versa for the American economy that very much wants to welcome Europeans back to our shores.
Thank you, Jennifer. And before I move to Jake's, let me just ask the blunt question. People are moving to 2022 if they don't get answers for this summer, but are they going to go somewhere else? I mean, after 9/11, Costa Rica did well. You know, there are options. What's your view on that?
Well, we're very excited about Greece and Iceland, and we have plenty of folks that are calling in strong demand for those destinations because they have found a way to navigate the health and the economy very effectively by allowing health credentials to be the path moving forward. We're seeing a big uptick in US operations, certainly. We're looking at places in basically where Americans can go. The Galapagos has just opened. You know, every day there's a new country coming up because they realize that if they don't have a plan soon and they don't have a process soon, yes, Americans will transfer to other destinations because they are eager to go.
That's clear. Thank you, Jennifer. We'll come back, I'm sure. Jake's, over to you.
Tim, I don't just want to reiterate what you said, because we've had very much the same experience. As I said, our source markets are predominantly Australia, but the US, where our primary focus is at the moment. And as we've had before, we find that the travel industry is incredibly resilient. There's pent-up demand. That's a fact. It's a given. We see it when we do our research, in our numbers. People still want to travel. What gets to me is that there seems to be a lack of a pragmatic plan for us to get back to that point where people, especially long-haul travel, can get back to Europe. I almost want to state that it seems like a lack of political leadership. A lot of politics happening at the moment, but we need leadership at this point. I've heard a statement before that subject to obviously that social media, that there's a social media dictatorship at the moment, and that's the narrative being driven. It's fear-mongering. But what I find, I mean, operators like us are incredibly resourceful in mitigating risk, and we can actually become part of the solution. So for us to be engaged in finding a way for us to get to that point where we can have people jump on planes and go and contribute to the European GDP again, we need a very clear-cut plan. I know that nothing is certain in this day and age, but at least try and create an element of control, or an appearance of control.
Jakes, thank you. Luis, wearing your hat as a key destination which really does depend on non-domestic demand, what are your impressions? What's the current situation?
Yes, well, as you well said, 2/3 of our tourism comes from international tourism, so we only have 1/3 national tourism. Just to give you a rough idea of what we're passing through, we went 25 years in overnight stays, 25 years back, so we have the same number in 2020 as we had in 1996, and 11 years in terms of receipts. Just to give you another idea, if we compare just January, the results in January, we went back 45 years. We went back to 1975. This is incredible. You can see that a country that has hit records in 2019 with 27 million guests, now looking at these numbers with such a big responsibility in terms of economy, especially what tourism gives to the national economy, is devastating. What we see, and I agree with what Jennifer and Jakes told, and of course with you, Tim, and the manifesto that was issued by ETOA, is of course we need to regain trust and confidence, not just on tourists, but also in our companies, in our tour operators, in our airline companies. And you can only do this with predictability. And for us, it's very, very clear that all that we have been doing so far is in that direction, but it's not the priority. And what we feel is sometimes this is not the priority. Of course, we understand that there are priorities like taking care of the health of our citizens or preventing the spreading of the virus, but there are ways to do this. And what we always say is that we need to find the bridge between tourism and health. And sometimes this bridge is lacking. That's why we support so much. And it's wonderful that we had so quick decision by the Commission. And I don't know if you've seen, but the decision will be taken very soon. The process that usually takes 2 years to 3 years to get something like this approved will be approved in 2 months. So these are good news, and it's a signal that things are moving forward. But still, we still have a lot of things to do, and that's our biggest worry: changing the perception from risky countries to risky persons, telling everyone that our economy is prepared, that we have. In Portugal and many other countries, the protocols, the clean and safe protocol in Portugal has more than 22,000 establishments. That way we have been training people, and people are aware of what they need to do to prevent this. But this bridge between health and tourism is essential. And what we feel now is that sometimes this bridge, we're starting to build it and then it falls. and we cannot allow this to happen anymore.
Very clear, Luis. Thank you. And even the highly speedy 2 to 3 months, that's going to be almost too late for the US market as well, going by what Jennifer says. So the urgency really is tight. Petra, over to you.
Thank you, Tim. And okay, just to frame it, let's face the music first. We all face the same challenges, lacking the same answers to the same questions, and yet a year later, we are basically no closer to the end of this uncertainty, to the end of the solution. And even the, I don't know, the allowances, the acknowledgement of the health credentials became a political, but basically the exclusively political issue. It is time that we actually really raise the voice more effectively, because as all my predecessors pointed out, really we all moved back. I mean, if we would be talking about the human ages, that would be great, but it doesn't work in economy that way. So it's time to really start moving fast forward, because we recognize the patterns, we know what the solutions are. You tackled, Tim, in the when we started very well, and let's just continue on this way and raise our voices and get this leadership that we want, need, and are giving the whole support to already for months now. You know, we just need some, in general, to gain back common sense, start listening to ourselves, and it's going to start rolling again. And yet, of course, there are some lessons to be learned, but I guess I would bet that we are very good on them, because so far it hurt a lot. This stop hurt a lot, and the pain is the best teacher. So I'm really sure if we continue listening to the solutions we found so far, and we actually start to implement them, we should finally start doing good for ourselves. And I'm talking primarily here on about the European destinations. And as far as my destination is concerned, for example, Ljubljana, we offer virtual tours of like every other destination. But the thing that really makes us happy, but also frustrated at the same time, is who watches and listens to them the most? The Americans. So please, we would love to welcome you. Just, you know, help us raising the voice that we will be welcome you as soon as possible, and everyone else along, of course.
Petra, we seriously want to get there. Yvonne, I know Germany's been having its time as well as Nuremberg itself. So what are your impressions of the current situation and your perspectives on the next month or two?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Just would like to give you a brief insight of the German situation at the moment. And Jennifer, you said that the vaccination rate in the US is about, more than 30%. Luckily, we arrived 11%. We're celebrating that. So it's still difficult times. Nuremberg highly depends on the business travels. That's why we lost last year 60% of overnight stays. There's almost 2 million overnight stays which we lost. Money-wise, this means that we lost last year 819 million euros, and weekly we're losing 18 million just in my city, Nuremberg. So it's a very tough time, and the tourism sector is really suffering at the moment. However, what we did, or what we're doing at the moment in Germany, is that we are trying to establish model regions in order to test opening strategies under certain regulations. And with these learnings, we are trying to establish an opening strategy in the near future. So we're testing now, modeling it, and trying to establish an opening strategy for Germany. What is interesting to know is that, yes, we're ready. The destinations, they made their homeworks. We are prepared throughout the whole customer journey. Museums are prepared, the sightseeings are prepared, the hotels, of course, the restaurants, we did the trainings. So we are all prepared, the destinations are prepared. But what we need, and Jennifer, you really made it clear to all of us, we need quick access to our countries now. We need clear regulations, and we need to have confidence in safe travel. The destination, as I said, we are ready. We're prepared, and we trained together with our health authorities. We do weekly presentations, and but we need to have clear regulations. And I hope that with this European digital vaccination pass, this will enable safe travel and easy access to Europe. So it's going to be issued in the 1st of June, isn't it, Luis? I hope.
End of June.
We'll get the crystal ball out in it next, Yvonne.
Okay. Yeah.
In terms of the next. Petra, Yvonne, and Luis, we're getting one or two questions that maybe you can just consider for later in the discussion. And you've all talked about the need for reassurance. So you can do it. There's a plan. We can deliver a safe experience. How will, what's the plan to communicate that? What's the plan to maintain confidence so that we can respond to demand just as soon as it's open? So we'll come back to that. But what are the plans around sales and marketing in that sort of sense? And thanks to Steve for that question. So now on to Christina, please.
Yes, so the EU is a great achievement, a great success. The European single market, that's all great, but when it comes to the pandemic, we are not Europe. We're 27 different member states, and each and every one of them thinks they have the solution and the data and they know it better how to deal with it. They all have different travel restrictions. So in that sense, it's a little bit of a political failure, Europe. We do have, for those who are not familiar with everything that's happening in the EU, we do have plans, we have initiatives. You've all heard about the digital green certificate, hopefully coming out by the summer. We do have all this in place, also recommendations, but it is what it is. They are just recommendations. So the member states, they actually do, they decide at the end of the day. So to just give you a timeline, the EU kind of wishes that we have vaccination of the adult population by the 80% by the summer. Summer, not exactly a very exact date. They also want to have the health certificate, green certificate, out by the summer, operational. And Agnes, you will probably be able to provide additional information. It's all rather vague, and we do hope that it is going to materialize. And we're really, really glad now that the decision makers in the EU have decided to fast track this. So yeah, this is all, we're all with Tim and Agnes here. We're in Brussels trying to move things as quick as possible, try to get a common European approach to coordinated lifting of travel restrictions, to testing and quarantines. And we have said many times what you have all already said. We need a plan, we need perspective, we need to be able to tell the customers, but also the enterprises by what time they can be able to operate or go on travel. So we're replicating the messages, and hopefully the member states will decide to now make better decisions.
Here's hoping. Before I go to Agnes, I'm just going to take one other question very quickly. Question from Amber. Hello to you. Could the EU Green Pass provide any benefit for third-party nationals? And the answer to that is that's not the intention. It's for EU citizens, the digital green certificate. More information about that on our website, and I'm sure plenty of others as well. Agnes, over to you.
Yes, I mean, I basically will echo the sense of urgency and emergency that the colleagues have highlighted before. So talking from the airline perspective, just a few figures to give you an idea. Traffic has reached between 65 and 70% of what it was in 2019, which is reference here for all of us. But so traffic is one element, but the number of passengers is another. And the few planes that are in the sky at the moment are far from full. And so actually, in terms of number of passengers in Europe, we've done 89% between January, February 2021 and the 2019 figures. So we're really talking dramatic fall. And the direct implication it has is also the question of connectivity. Beyond the single market, the single aviation market was real success of Europe, of the EU, and we had connectivity between islands and capitals, between secondary cities, of different member states, and this is actually in danger, and it could actually take years to recover that level of flexibility and connectivity of the continent. And that will also impact not just Europeans wanting to go home or discover a new, faraway region, but also the US tourists and others who might not just want to go to the big hubs and the big capitals. So that's a bit the situation we're in. And as the colleagues, we need clarity and dates on when things will be possible again. As airlines in Brussels, we're trying we've called the European Commission to lead a recovery task force for the freedom of movement. We understand, as the colleague said, we can't reopen just yet, but we need to prepare, and this preparation takes time. Definitely, and we are, as the private sector, very happy to support the policymakers, both at EU and national level, to establish the new rules, but it needs to happen now. Also specifically maybe to the aviation industry, I mean, I'm sure our listeners are now familiar with the very secure filters in aircrafts that maybe you didn't know about before the pandemic. So, and we are seeing more and more studies of how actually traveling by air is very safe. So as long as we keep the masks on and social distancing before and after boarding, the aviation industry and the ongoing protocols that have been put in place make it very safe. So we're ready, as much as the other industry representative around the table, to open Europe and really see a full restart for this summer.
Great. Okay, so all we need is a bit of political will, seems to be the conclusion. But maybe there's also a strange political paradox, because as you said, Agnes, getting mobility within Europe, freedom of movement within the EU27 is one of the fundamental principles of the European Union. But actually, from an evidence-based perspective, it's easier to manage a population flying in by plane whose health credentials can get checked before they board a plane than all the land borders in Europe. I mean, I think I'm right in saying just Portugal and Spain share a land border of over 1,200 kilometers. So, actually a lot of the long haul market is in fact relatively low risk. And that's quite a complicated thing to deal with politically when your priority is opening up the internal borders. And that's another thing that's causing a lot of pressure to European politicians. So thank you very much, panel, for a really clear picture of the current position and what you think will happen if we don't make urgent progress. We're going to ask the audience a question now, and it is focusing on North America, and it's really just to get your sense. What's your instinct, audience, about when we think North America visitors are going to be getting to Europe this summer? So we've already heard one or two initiatives. Greece is already trying to open up, maybe the UK will, but at least some EU countries will admit leisure visitors from North America before the end of, and you have to choose, any one of June, July, August, September, or the remainder of 2021. I will close that poll in about 20 seconds, so please make sure that you fill it, and then the panel will raise their eyebrows in surprise or just look a bit sad, depending on what the final result is. So I'll close the poll in a moment. Thank you very much for your participation. I'll close it now and share the result. Jennifer, that's not what you wanted. That's later than you hope, but there is, you know, 30. There's something in June, July. Is that better or worse than you expected? I'll just invite Jennifer to give an initial reaction, and then we'll see where we go.
Well, this doesn't surprise me. Ultimately, we're certainly gearing up for a June start if we had to, but we're very hopeful that some other countries like the UK, where there is a high vaccination rate, where again, and I think Lewis said this very well, you can identify and based on the person rather than the country, but at least that has both optics that might help, that we might see some countries start peeling off in July and August, especially hopefully Portugal, hopefully Spain, hopefully some other countries that are so dependent on the summer months for tourism, even more than the balance of Europe. So look, we'll take any of Europe because it will help everyone to get to the other side of this. But we're again, not a surprise, but we just hope it's earlier rather than later.
Great. Yes, we all do. And since we're in a politically vexed area, I'm going to mention the Brexit word. Sorry. But it does raise an interesting issue because the UK, even when it was within the European Union, was separate to Schengen arrangements. It's in a common travel area with the Republic of Ireland. The UK is in dialogue. It would like to open a bridge with the US, and there's definitely some political will there, both sides of the Atlantic. You know, there's Louise thinking, hang on, the UK is a really important source market for Portugal. Guys, you know, and I know it's not a competition, and actually UK and Portugal have got a fabulous relationship dating back an extremely long time, but aren't we going to get into a weird place where there's this sort of strange competition for let's get them before the other people do, when actually what we really need is a rational and coordinated opening soon? I mean, Louis, do you want to share any thoughts on that, or would you rather I talk about something else?
I totally agree, and I've said it this several times. My mission here is not having 10 more tourists than other countries or less 5 than Spain. It's regaining trust and putting airplanes in the air and people moving. And what I think is crucial, and I said the how is how to create bridges. And Jennifer, we're talking a lot about the US and the UK. Of course, it's important. The flexibility we need to have, and we all know in our jobs, in order to analyze data and see how things are moving and how fast they are changing, is amazing. A market that we thought would be open only by the end of the year, like the United States of America, we're now seeing, due to the vaccination protocols, due to everything that is happening internally inside the European Union, that it might open earlier. So what we're talking now, maybe in 1 week, is completely different because something might happen. We might have another vaccine or something completely different. But what I do think, and of course, we always try to find solutions in other persons or somewhere else, but we also have solutions internally. And when I talk about building the bridge between tourism and health, I always remember that a few months ago, the European Center for Disease Control said that people traveling were the less reason for worries. There was much bigger transmission between the communities inside the country than of people of traveling. Why don't we support more studies about this? Why don't we push this kind of studies on how the virus transmits on people that doesn't belong to a country or is just visiting? If my country, the transmission is only based on social contacts and family contacts, what happens if I get more tourists? And this is the kind of discussion that we're not having because no one cares. Everyone is much more focused on the solutions on short term and not the long term. So I would say we should go back to basics, go back to science, and start promoting these studies. I saw the other day a study about how efficient it is to have a test, an antigen test compared with a PCR test. It's the same. The only difference is one is much cheaper. So why don't we use them? why there isn't any information on this? Why don't we push the international organizations to do this? And this is the kind of things we need right now. For me, it's quite clear. It's a matter of information, but it's also a matter of communication and joining forces. And when we're so worried about when to open, on how to travel and when to travel, we have those problems internally and internationally. Instead of that, we should be focusing on what kind of tools can we have, on what kind of ammunitions we have to fight this. And this is where the tourism sector should be together as a whole, instead of just putting blame on top of governments or politicians or other institutions or health authorities. And I think if we could do this all together, we would at least have a plan for the future on our side and convince everyone that this was important. We would be building the bridge again.
Yeah, great statement, Luis. And it reminds me of a lot of the language that scientists have been using this past year, who really don't want to take political sides. They're not interested in that. They're interested in solutions. They're interested in explaining. They're interested in following the evidence. And as you say, there is data. We've now had a laboratory in Europe for a year of how to manage this, how to work, how to look after guests in hotels, on coaches, you name it. We've done it. There is data, and we need to talk about it. Luis, go ahead.
Let me just say one more thing, and I will shut up permanently. The problem here is that we are afraid of social media and of media, and no one wants to go back in a decision. No one, not even us, especially a governor, especially a politician. And that's the biggest problem, where we have to focus on the solutions for the future with what we have now, and not being afraid of taking decisions or studying problems, or at least trying plans A's, planning, as we all said, planning. Let's create several plans. This has to be an international situation. It's not just internal, it's international.
Sure. And sorry, Jennifer, jump in, please.
I think, Luis, I wholeheartedly agree with everything you've said. I also would say, on that vein, taking it a step further, that with Greece and Iceland opening, that is going to be additional data. There is a plan. There is an approach. And I think all of Europe should be looking very closely at them and any other country that does open to show how this can be managed effectively and responsibly, because the aircrafts are safe, because the air circulation is better than in your dining room, because there are plenty of folks who are vaccinated or who are willing to take a test, an antigen or a PCR test or whatever the case might be, and find ways to make it happen. These are pilot tests, right? These are early markets. Let's watch them, let's learn from them, and let's accelerate their learning very, very quickly.
Luis, there's a statement rather than the question which suggests that Luis needs to run the European Union. So your next job, I know you wouldn't wish that on anybody. You talked about it being very difficult to go back on a decision as a politician. Germany's just had an example of that, and an extremely gracious and humble reversal of a decision by the Chancellor over the arrangements for Easter. And you know, there are complications in Germany arising from a very paper-based health system. So the whole possibility of Germans being able to leave Germany once they've got digital certification, there are logistic obstacles there. So if I'm listening to what we've just heard from Luis, you know, from the perspective of Germany, you know, how do you see those political obstacles working out, or the public discourse? Is there enough honesty? Is there enough data-led discussion in the public sector?
Yes, I just did want to put some water into Luis' beautiful Portuguese wine. Yes, we do have these data, by the way. They're existing, and we are working with them. Unfortunately, it seems that they don't seem, you know, they don't seem to bother the politicians. So we know how to regulate and how to create concepts and strategies of receiving visitors. However, it seems that the politicians at the moment do have other problems to solve, and as you see by the media within Germany, we are in a deep crisis at the moment, not only health-wise as we all are, but also also politically spoken. However, I think what other countries do, you know, creating models and trying to test, that's what actually Germany is doing in implementing these model regions, and in order to find out what works, what could be a strategy of reopening to live and continue to live with COVID, because that's for sure. We all have to face reality, and we have to cope with this for quite some time. So it's, yes, Louis and Jennifer, it's important to find strategies, and I think we're on a good way. However, the opening the borders and to find, I mean, we have 16 lenders in Germany, and we don't agree, not always. Let's just imagine to find an agreement within Europe. So we have to put our emphasis on open borders for into Europe and in between Europe. That is the major issue.
Jake,
Sorry,
go ahead. Sorry, I was on mute.
I've been waving my finger for a while now. This is more in response to Liz, what you've said. You see, there seems to be a fundamental fear and a deep-founded fear of what happens in media, especially social media, which is perfectly understandable. But from my perspective, I mean, if you take social media, for example, it's just running riot with the negative narrative, where we as a company, for example, have a very strong social platform that we communicate through. And what we found was that if you utilize that in the right way, in a responsible way, to bring home a positive narrative, it does create a very, very strong message that there will be a recovery at some point, and it will be a responsible recovery. So well, it's not a proposal so much, but where I see a breach between the if there is a political will and the value of tourism in Europe is, if it's actually valued, the contribution thereof, there should be a bridge between private sector like us and Jennifer and the narrative that we run on platforms like social media, because we have a lot of experience of that, and we have a huge platform, and we are the voice that's going to speak to these people. So if that's recognized, we have a lot to bring to the table.
Jakes, I think that's well said. And towards the end of this, we'll just go around the panel just to see. So what can we do as the private sector? What can you do out there in the audience to sort of help shift the debate, get us to a less defensive place, be more data-led, and describe in a more positive way what the plan should be? Before coming to Christina, Agnes, and Petra for further remarks, I'm going to launch the next poll, because it's expressly about the health credentials that we're talking about. So that would be the neutral term. You could call it a vaccination passport, or you could call it a digital green certificate. But do we think this is just going to be part of life? So the next question for the audience, just about to come up now. So health credentials, for example, digital green certificate will become a standard requirement for international travel in 2022. So it's not whether you think it's a good idea or not. Do you think this is coming and it's just going to be something you need before you get on a plane to go international? We're not talking about internal EU crossing borders. We're talking about getting on a plane in America to Europe. Is this just going to be what happens? So the answers are looking pretty clear already. So I'll close the poll in about 5 seconds, and I'll start with Petra for reactions to this thought, little surprise for you. So close poll, share the results. There you go. So the audience overwhelmingly think that this is coming. And one of the interesting things about the digital green certificate as proposed by the European Union is it's been framed in a very temporary way. We'll only have this as long as we need it. Feels like the audience think this is something that's going to be here to stay. So Petra, by all means, address that question or anything else you wish to hear. And if others have any responses to that audience response, please do raise your finger. So Petra, just on that or anything else, then I'll come to Agnes after Petra. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, on that, it's not a surprise. I would answer the same. Actually, I would choose the first one, strongly agree, because it's like we started to continue, like we are continuing saying, the patterns of travel will change. And if this is a, I don't know, common reinsurance that it is going to give us, it doesn't really matter which credential, but the one that makes us feel safe, because this is now a prime word in the travel planning. That's what we are going to adopt. The initial question, if I remember correctly from the audience before, was what's the plan to reinsurance? Look, we all stepped down now from emphasizing our DNAs, our uniquenesses, to starting and to keep communicating the we can and we will provide safe experiences at destinations or you know, for in our case destinations, that we have protocols in place, that we have proper trainings, that we will do everything to keep you guys safe, because our survival depends on that. So after that, we will return back to marketing our DNAs and uniquenesses. But right now, this is what we are addressing and what we will keep addressing, that we will feel reassured and safe when we start travel again, more massively, I think. I mean,
yeah, and I think, Petra, that echoes very much what Luis was saying. This is not a competition. Okay, no. We need to just get people accepting of an, you know, a low level of residual risk. That's normal life, and we need to get on with it. And yes, over to you.
Thanks for the poll. I think it really speaks volumes, and definitely also illustrates the frustration that our listeners themselves experience with the fact that we haven't been able to travel for more than a year now, and with them the whole population, right? So I think when you propose any solution that will facilitate travel moving forward, everyone jumps on it. So it's indeed very interesting that the EU one is only a temporary one. And once again, as with everything since the beginning of this crisis, we have a proposal coming from the European Commission, but at the end of the day, we need member states to implement it. And we have to be, you know, very mindful of, you know, it can take time. And we discussed, or we hinted to that earlier on the timeline. I want to be very optimistic, but it will be a challenge. And you know, to give our audience a preview, before it's actually digital green certificates, we'll have paper forms, which, you know, in my personal perspective, does not necessarily make lots of sense when we are in this pandemic situation and you want to avoid as much as possible contact between people and interaction. But that's the reality. And if we get, you know, one harmonized form throughout the EU, whether you've been tested recently, whether you have been vaccinated, or whether you are now immune because you are recovered, as soon as scientific proof is shown that would be the case, then I think we are moving forward. So definitely, and from the airline parts as well as airports, I mean, it's just a question of where in the process, you know, online check-in at the airport, etc. Where in the process will you need to show this this health credential? But it is relatively simple to put in place. But now we, you know, all eyes on the member states, on the national authorities, to not just you know, have the big speech, but actually implement all that and get moving so that we have that in place for June.
Thank you, Agnes. And Christina, some of this is making me think that all the travel agents across Europe, and sure, lots of the travel is still intra-European, but, you know, people do want to visit the United States when they can. You know, they want to go to Canada, and that has a slightly shorter season because it's cold up there some of the year. But you know, what are your members telling you about the, you know, their expectations long term? Do you think it's likely that there's going to be acceptance among European consumers that you might need to have some kind of health ID thing before you get on an international flight? Is that something that's culturally acceptable, or are there still quite big obstacles to that in Europe, and that explains some of the political resistance, perhaps?
Thank you, Tim. I think well, if I had to complete the poll, I would probably also say that the certificate will be wildly applicable as from next year. this year and certainly next year. And I think that people are also willing to use a certificate and show their health credentials. But unfortunately, in Europe, we still have a lot of discussions around the health certificates. One being it should not be discriminatory in the sense that only vaccinated people can travel, but that is not the case. It should be made very clear. It's not a health pass. It's a health certificate. It's just providing proof that you are complying with the travel restrictions. And if anything, it's the travel restrictions that are discriminatory. They are determining whether you need to be either vaccinated or you have to have a test in order not to quarantine upon arrival and so on. And the other issue that's the other discussion that we have in Europe is about protection of personal data. We have very stringent data protection legislation, the so-called GDPR legislation. And so, of course, there's a trade-off between, providing personal data and then the health measures. And so I think this is the reason why the Commission only proposed a temporary certificate, because these measures of requesting people to show their health credential is only can only be asked or required from people as long as these restrictions are really proportionate and necessary. So I don't know whether we will have this health certificate forever. Hopefully, as soon as the pandemic is under control, that the most of the population is vaccinated and that we've got herd immunity. I think we can then ditch the digital health certificate or use it for something else. But I think definitely people are keen to use the digital health certificate just to be able to travel again.
Very clear. And I think in some ways, this is the most optimistic finding of this discussion. If there is widespread acceptance that we'll be pragmatic, we understand there's things about it which are uncomfortable, it makes sense. Jennifer.
I'll just add that we've been polling our guests about every 6 to 8 weeks throughout the pandemic, and increasingly, and now it's up to more than 90% of our travelers have said they would gladly show proof of vaccination or any kind of results for the opportunity to travel. So, and I've heard that quite consistently across others in the tour operator space, and I think the most recent US Travel Association poll showed that up to be 60%. So the point is for those who are most likely to get on a plane and come to Europe, they're more than happy to indicate that they are health responsible, that they are clear of the virus, and that they can participate in the economy, enjoy all the beauty that Europe has to offer in a safe and responsible way.
Thank you, Jennifer. So say all of us. And as we head towards closing remarks, I just want to reflect on something that Jakes and I were talking about, which is one of the most appealing things about Europe is the diversity of its supply chain. Lots and lots of little businesses all over Europe, small restaurants, independent hotels, very characterful, maybe not financially super secure. You know, a lot of these businesses do focus on long haul markets. Okay, it's not just domestic. So I think perhaps there's a little bit of an illusion that long haul business, hey, we can wait till 2022. Our impression is some businesses really cannot wait until 2022. And Jakes, I don't know if you want to speak to that, or maybe Jennifer as well, but from the supply chains perspective, your partners in Europe, you know, what are you hearing from them?
Yeah, I think absolutely that's the uniqueness of Europe, and what people appreciate, especially the long haulers. And what we're finding at this stage, from our perspective, we've had family-owned businesses that were built on the back of our business, and all of a sudden, I mean, they don't have the financial means or the support in place for them to sustain the situation indefinitely. And of course, they can if there was a sound, pragmatic plan, at least for them to rally around. They would have stood a chance to get to that point. But there is a real danger if this goes on too long that the supply of these uniqueness or the unique services in Europe will fall away, fall by the wayside. So That is something to consider. It's not just about the direct spend of the long-haul market in Europe. It's also about the local market and what people have to do to survive. Because even in our situation, and we have some of our mom and pop suppliers that have to adapt and do all kinds of other things to survive.
Yeah, I would totally agree, and it's just devastating to see, frankly, because you have, of course, some of the larger global companies that are hotel chains and the like, might have the financial will have the financial capital to weather this. But what our guests are wanting are those local mom and pop experiences. They want the back roads. Yes, they want to be in city center, but they want to explore the countryside, and they want the richness of the fabric of Europe. The most popular show in the US right now is Stanley Tucci's program on Italy, and everybody just talking about going and eating in Italy. And yet the fear is that they're not going to be there when we can actually come. And I do think that when you talk about ways to bring people to the table, yes, health is paramount, right? It's at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs on the bottom. We all need to have a degree of health and safety and security. And so if we can manage that, the next thing that's going to happen, though, is these countries, all of you cannot support these businesses forever, right? There cannot be a social net that lasts yet another year. And they need to be able to stand on their feet again. And I think the devastation that's going to happen there, that might not be in everyone's face right now, but is going to happen if there isn't a set of recovery. I mean, look, tourism, we all know, is 1 in 10 jobs globally. And so the tourism economy is not separate from the overall economic recovery of the world. They're integrated and they're essential. And we can do this as you said, Tim, at the very outset, in a very risk responsible way. And so it's important that we do so, not only because we want to get our own businesses and get our travelers going again, but because it preserves what Europe is all about, and the people that deliver those experiences and those smaller communities that are at most risk. And why leave them in the shadows?
Absolutely. Closing remarks now, and I think Jakes and Jennifer have really sort of set the tone for, looking after what we value, but doing it in a sensible way. This is not risky. So I'm going to invite Luis, then Petra, then Yvonne, then Christina, then Agnes to give some closing remarks and thank our audience very much as the hour approaches. So Luis, any final thoughts? What can we do?
Well, thank you, Tim, and thank you all. It has been really good to be here and talking openly about these issues, because sometimes it's really difficult to talk open about the problems. What can we do? And I would say that the worst thing that could happen to us, to the activity, to the world, to these small businesses, and this is really the point. Many small businesses, family-run businesses in any part of the world are suffering because of this. International decisions that are being taken or are not being taken right now are affecting our families, our neighbors, our countries. This is important. And the problem here is, if we focus on the problem and not on the solution, we will never have anything moving. And Christina, you said something which was incredible. Of course, one of the best things that we will have now, one of the solutions, one of the end of the tunnel, is a digital green certificate. It was shocking to see thousands of people, when this was raised, saying that we had to take care of discrimination and data privacy, without understanding that, of course, this would be addressed. The problem is, if we focus on this and don't focus on the solution, we will never have the digital green pass. And this is, for us, the most important. And I'm sure that if we do this, and we have the ability to take the risk and take the decisions that we need to take right now, we will be open very soon. Because once again, this is a matter of time and space. Each day that passes is a day that we lose, and we need mobility to work. And once again, thank you so much, team, and thank you to everyone.
Thank you very much, Luis. Petra, over to you.
Thank you so much, Tim, and thanks also to everyone else for really a great discussion. What can we do? Definitely stay focused. That's really what we really need to do. We need to stay focused. We need to keep walking on this path that we know it's right, even though we walk too slow for our taste, but just it's important that we don't lose focus. And the second really important thing for me is to stay positive. I mean, what is the takeout from the pandemic? What did we learn from it? Definitely that nothing is for granted. Even a short while ago, so unpopular word as over-tourism. Will we talk about over-tourism sometime soon? I think not. Even if or when the mass tourism will return, after this strong experience of social distancing and lack of human or personal touch, hugs, and so forth, I believe no one would mind to enter and walk in the crowds if the person would feel safe, would feel pleasant, and most of all, overwhelmed with his or her own discoveries at destinations and not being afraid of people. And I am looking forward to this time because it will come.
Hold that thought. Yvonne.
Well, there's almost nothing to add to Petra. Yes, be positive and use the studies, use the insight that we already have throughout the world, by the way, and let's concentrate on finding strategies and ways to solve and get us out of this crisis. And I think that our industry has proved that we are pretty creative, and we can use all sources of information in order to inform our clients, the travelers, yes, we have to make sure that the digital certificate will come as soon as possible, and this will ease our lives much more and enables us to secure safe travel within and throughout Europe.
You're here, Christina.
I really don't have anything else to add to Petra, Yvonne, and Luis. I think they summarized it all. We need to continue working on a plan for reopening travel, and certainly the digital green certificates is a good solution for this. So let's work on it. We're working on it at European level, but there are also global initiatives. So we are working with counterparts in the US, and yes, so we'll continue working on it. And thank you for the invitation, Tim.
You're very welcome. And Agnes, just in case you're worried that you've been given the tricky job of going right at the end, this is also a chance to recognize the fantastic work Airlines for Europe have done in keeping us focused on an evidence-based approach to this. I think that is the big message I'm taking from this, that it is about the evidence, and that is a solutions-oriented approach. But Agnes, if you have anything further to add, please do.
Well, thank you very much, Tim, and all colleagues here today. It's been a pleasure. Maybe just a few elements. As we said, the digital green certificates is basically one additional tool, but it relies on the travel restrictions. So basically, I will use this platform to yet again call on member states to coordinate those travel restrictions, because at the end of the day, this is what is preventing the American tourist and everyone else from traveling. We have the tools, we have the evidence, we have for instance, the European ECDC map with the different colors of the zone. But the issue at the moment is that this doesn't translate in the same way, or let's say, the health ministry in France reads it differently from the Slovenian one, and that's the issue. So as airlines will continue to push for the common solution, we have worked previously on the testing protocol, depending on the zone, and we'll definitely try to contribute to the discussion moving forward in that discussion. And as you said, Tim, let's follow the evidence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And in case any politicians are listening, you really do have a tough job, and we recognize that, and we wish you well. If you need any help, you know where to find us. Thank you very much to all our fabulous panelists, all of you who joined. Sorry to take you over the hour. That was a fascinating conversation, and I so hope we get to meet in person soon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Cheers.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.